Hey everyone.
Hey, how's it
Hi.
going?
Good. Hi Al. Hi Donna.
Hello.
Got a special guest today. We're very excited to have her on and get to learn more about your story, Donna, how stigma has impacted you, and talk about your art, which I think is very important and ties into everything we've been covering.
Well, thank you.
Happy to have you. Would you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what you do, what
Okay.
you're doing right now, anything you'd like to share?
So my name's Donna Wayt, and I work for Mental Health America of Licking County. And I teach. I have a lot of jobs. Normally, before the pandemic, I had to have a lot of things going on in order to work for a nonprofit and still work full time. And there's just a lot you have to do. So I teach the bridges out of poverty in the jails and in some lift court and LAPN, adult probation, felony probation, and a couple of drug rehabs. And I also have another job through the same company where I facilitate a group called Compeer. And Compeer is like a lot like a support group, but like a lot more than just a support group for people with mental illness, for persistent and reoccurring mental illness, and all the stuff that goes with that, trauma, even physical trauma, even like a brain injury, even like surgeries, heart attacks, and then addictions, all that comes with that big mushy mess that we call mental illness. And people who consider themselves in recovery, who are actually working programs of recovery, are encouraged to join this group so that we can connect with others, because a lot of times people in recovery have trouble making friends. We lose all our friends, and or we haven't even been able to make friends because of that stigma. Because if hi, nice to meet you, I'm addicted to heroin, I'm 255 days clean, but you know what that is, I have schizophrenia, hi, nice to meet you. It's very hard for people to let go of that self-defense mechanism that keeps them safe, kind of thing, what they perceive as safe, and kind of give people in recovery a chance to get to know them and get to know each other. And it also helps to build confidence in people who are in recovery, who are trying, not to hate themselves, who are trying to live their lives, who are trying to have some quality of life, the aftershocks of whatever their thing is. Just that socialization key is so important. So normally we had lunch and linger. We go once a month, twice a month. We go out and we'd have lunch together and we talk and just string it out for hours because it's fun. We go for walks around downtown and just stuff, gallery hop. We would do a lot of stuff, bowling and putt. And every Thursday we had an art and recovery course class, an open studio where the main place on South 3rd, that's open right now, by the way. I'm not in there, but they are open. But they let us use their art studio to recover for recovery-based self-help kind of therapy, right? Because nobody's got a degree in this. All I got is some clean time. So what we are doing is creating this environment. We did before, creating this environment for people who are in recovery, not only to socialize, but to also add another component to the socialization, that's art, that kind of helps you. Maybe I can't talk about what I've been through. Maybe I can't speak about it because of what it triggers me, behaviors that it might trigger me, and I'm not ready for that yet. But if I put it on, if I use a visual or an audio, if I sing about it, if I write about it, if I paint a weird picture, somebody might walk by and go, "Oh, that's weird." But somebody might look by and go, "Oh, I know exactly what that is." It resonates with people who have that same similar life experience, and it makes that connection deeper. So now that we're in the pandemic, right? Everything's gone viral, not viral. See, that's the thing, is I'm old. Everything's gone virtual. Thank you, virtual. I have my son prep me for all this, right? All this, like these words that didn't mean anything to us or meant something totally different. But anyway, we're trying to do it all online. And I was not the most computer literate person when I was very much adopted by Mental Health America. They decided to employ me. But we've created a a Facebook page for our Compeer group, and the majority of what we are doing is based on this one little Facebook page. But this one little Facebook page has so much stuff in it that we're having a ball. We have belly dancing Mondays, or Zumba on Wednesday, or Taibo on Friday, or whatever it is. And whoever takes the most ridiculous picture of each other, like a selfie, like there's, yeah, you know, yoga like this for old ladies. It's just one of those things. Whoever takes the best picture gets it posted. We post them sometimes if they let us. And then we have art class every Thursday at 1 o'clock. We have an interactive art class where I've set it up so that I start an art project and we talk about a subject. Like we talked about integration of self, of that accepting our darkest, ugliest, most miserable, unhappy with ourselves, parts of ourselves, and integrating that and accepting it and considering that part of your charm. How do you make the thing that is perceived by others as wrong with you part of what's so right about you and so empowering? Yeah. Is that, am I rambling? I feel like I'm rambling.
Not at all. That's amazing and very powerful. Thank you for sharing all of that. All those events are very needed in general and especially through pandemic. So that's awesome that you're able
We have a coffee chat too, like y'all, on Saturdays. Some college students from OSU have volunteered to discuss very delicately, and they're very good at it, current topics that are, what's the word? They're spoken in a way that are not, they're very conscious of people's triggers, and they encourage people to talk about things that are happening that maybe they might be uncomfortable with in thought. Like all that happened in the Capitol building, right? We can't make this a political, I can't make that a political platform. I have to be very hyper aware of who funds my programming. So we encourage people to talk about how they felt about that and what feels safe in an environment of what feels safe and what is not safe, and how do you know when it's safe and how do you know when it's not? And how do you know when an unsafe thing is really going to affect you personally or affect the people around you, and why you should care if it affects the people around you and not you personally? Those kind of conversations that are really kind of difficult, but so interesting. And some people are so willing to talk. They really are just so willing. They're needed. They need to talk to it because they can't, sometimes you can't go to your family members and have an open conversation about, especially something delicate like politics, because you're only going to get this big stonewall of generational conformity that says this is our people and this is what we are and we fit in this box and we're clannish and that's what this is. You can't go outside, you can't think outside of this construction that has been in place for years and years. And that's not what evolution is. That's not what cultural evolution is. And as a culture, we evolve. As people, we evolve. Our intellectual abilities evolve. Our ability to have compassion and empathy for others, I think that all evolves, especially when you're in recovery, because you're friggin' hypersensitive to it. You've been numb for forever, and now all of a sudden you're like a big pin cushion. You can feel everything, and it's all stabby, and you don't know what it is. It's foreign. I'm sorry, I talk a lot. You told me I can talk. I'm coming. I'm gonna talk your ear off.
Oh yeah, love it.
Here for it. Don't apologize.
Hey, so I was wondering, since we're focusing kind of on stigma, addiction, and art, how has stigma personally impacted you, and in what ways have you kind of protected yourself from stigma or changed your thoughts on it?
Oh, that's making me cry laughing. I'm sorry. Okay. So stigma has affected me in so many ways. So many ways that I really, this is probably not even a good platform to talk about all those ways. But let's see, where can I, let me just give you like a little story. I'll give you a little scenario. In my family, we were told this big long-winded story, and it was very like elaborate and very beautiful story about a family member, this great grandmother who grew up in an orphanage, like a state school, who was taken away from her. her family, and she was a Native American woman who was taken away from her family, and they didn't tell her her birthday. She didn't know her birthday. She didn't know her nation. She didn't know her language. She didn't know anything about any of her people. So I'm bipolar. I have post-traumatic stress disorder. I have complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So I'm not chemically, like born chemically bipolar. I'm affected my trauma through, I don't know, glandular stuff. I'm not smart enough to tell you what it is, but that's my diagnosis. So when I get onto something and I become obsessed with it, it gets really big and it becomes a big part of, I can become obsessed with things. And this Native American culture I was obsessed with for years. And I really loved that I had that journey. And there were so many people who gave me that side eye, in a sweat lodge with this pasty white lady in the sweat lodge, and they weren't really comfortable. It felt as if, and it was put to me many times, that I was misappropriating someone else's culture. And I argued. I would Standing Rock. I was a medic at Standing Rock, and I speak a little Lakota, and I can make fry bread, and I can make wujapi. And I married somebody at one point in my life who was a very predominant figure in my experience in their culture. But after Standing Rock, I had a spiritual awakening, and it took years because I'm an alcoholic, and a lot of isms, but my main problem in life has been my alcoholism. And after years of trying to be sober, I found a Native American path to sobriety. It's called White Bison. White Bison is a well-briety movement. It's a 12-step Native American based. They use the big book, but this is 200 years older than the big book. These were appropriated steps created by elders to save the nations of people who were dying of alcoholism, because alcohol was introduced into the culture and they were not genetically whatever. Anyway, I come back from Standing Rock and I'm like, I've had this great spiritual experience, and let me just tell you all about my great spiritual enlightenment. And I had been waiting since 1995 to have this. You're supposed to have your 12th step. Your 12th step, you're supposed to have this spiritual enlightenment. I've done my steps over and over and over. Now, don't get me wrong, I ain't been sober since 95. We ain't gonna talk about all that. But I'm a recovery person, and I'm honest. So if I fall down, I get back up and take a shower and start counting again, because that's how my program works. But I came back from Standing Rock and ended up in a homeless shelter, and my son did his DNA, and my son was like, "Mom, we're not Native American." And I was like, "That's crazy. You can't count on these things. They're just crazy." So then my aunt had it done, and then my dad had it done, and then we don't have an ounce of Native American blood. And what we are is Nigerian. And if you look at me, I look as Nigerian as I do Native American. But that stigma of being a white woman in a sweat lodge made me realize they teach something called Mitakwasi. Mitakwasi is where we're all related. You're my cousin, my niece, you're my family, just like anybody else. It doesn't matter where you live on this planet. We are people of the Earth tribe, that kind of thing. And it never became more profound to me than when I figured out I wasn't Native American and that I was Nigerian. But now, in that culture, I received a feather and a name and a pipe and a responsibility. I made a promise to people who mean everything to me that I would live my life in a certain way, and I still have to honor that. I don't care if I'm Czechoslovakian, doesn't matter what my genes are. I made this promise, and I when I introduce myself to people in my culture, in my particular practice, my spiritual practice right now, where I'm leaning right now, I introduce myself. I say, "My name is Kea Washtewia." And I have to tell you that because I need to take a moment to explain to you why I culturally misappropriated the Lakota Nation and Native Americans in our culture. I completely misappropriated their culture, but not in that way that I wasn't being abusive or any of that. I just didn't know. And I think that that's part of our responsibility now that we have this genetic ability to figure out it would be different. I think it would be worse misappropriation if I had applied for college grants and said, I'm Native American. My grandma told me so, and then, but I think it's also important to be conscious of the fact that those family stories are not always what they seem. I don't know. Americans are so starved for culture. We're so starved for culture that I think for a minute politics became my cultural identity, because I came back with this, oh my God, I just watched the Army Corps of Engineers blow a woman's arm off with a fracture grenade. Like, I was there, I saw that happen. And I came back and was like, holy shit. Everything I ever thought I knew about politics and about my country and about my freedom and about the Constitution, it's all bullshit. And I didn't know. Am I allowed to cuss here? I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
You're good. You're
I don't mean
good.
to offend anybody, but
You are
that
all
kind of stigma, because I really did get my 12 step. I got my 12 step when I'll tell you what, I'm in the shelter, still in the shelter. And I didn't have a car. My husband kept my car. And it was raining and I was wearing tennis shoes. And I was walking to a job from the shelter over here on Granville Street. And I walked by Daisy's Diner. And it's raining. And I had an umbrella, but it was raining and my socks were frozen to my toes. So if I was like standing there flexing my toes, trying to get the feeling back of my feet, and I could hear my socks crunching, and I look, and there's my ex-husband walking out of a restaurant, nice and warm, in a nice car and nice clothes, and he had nice food, all these things. And I started laughing. I started laughing to the point where I realized I would love it if I could blame all my problems on him. I would just love it. I could be like, you're a monster. You did this to me. But that's not true. My spiritual enlightening is that I did it to myself. I took myself to North Dakota. I needed to do that for a spiritual purpose. And I didn't realize that at the moment. At the moment, it just seemed ridiculous to me. Like, oh, he probably would let me too, because he's a nice guy. He probably would let me just like blame it all on him. It's all you. It's all your fault. But then that kind of stigma, like where people think, oh, Donna's relapsed. She's in the homeless shelter. She's 40 some odd years old in the homeless shelter. But I didn't even think about getting drunk. Didn't even dawn on me. I didn't have enough money to get drunk. All I really wanted to do was get out. Maybe get a little revenge. Maybe have a really good life so I can be like, fuck you, I need you anyway.
Thanks for sharing all of that. I guess journey in trying to find yourself and your culture and what makes you feel whole and authentic can be a very long and painful one, especially given a lot of the external factors that are meant to kind of keep us isolated, right? And from finding that culture as well. So thank you so much for sharing that.
I hope you don't mind a little oversharing. That's part of my charm.
You're good. No, we love it. That vulnerability too is so important and helps us feel less alone, right? Whenever we're conditioned to keep it in, not share it, it brings down the mood, whatever. We need to push against all of that to heal individually and collectively, right? You've kind of spoken a little bit to each, but we've been talking about how internalized stigma, public stigma, and structural stigma are their own things, but are also connected in a lot of ways too. So I want to ask you, do you think they're related? How do you think they're related, and how has that shown up in your life as well?
Okay, so we're talking cultural. What was the other?
Structural stigma, public, and then internalized. How do you think the three are related, if you do think they're related, and how has that shown up in your life?
I'm such a visual person. I have to write it down and think about it, because I'm doing something called shadow work. And I don't know if any of you are into Carl Jung, but shadow work, that embracing those things that you hide and suppress about yourself. And like, I was a really chubby kid, and my mom wanted me to be a ballerina, and I was always like that. I'm not a ballerina. I'm a bipolar artist. I'm not a ballerina. I was a traumatized little monster girl. I just wanted to break stuff and jump off the roof and beat up little boys. I just was like a little monster kid. I didn't want to be a friggin' ballerina. And that kind of stigma of little girls who don't fit into that costume as something that I rebelled against from a very early age. And I think that rebellious part of my personality probably saved me from a lot of really self-destructive. I did some self-destructive stuff, don't get me wrong. But I think it saved me from another path that would have been maybe more tragic than the one I took. That structural and public, I don't know. Let's see, what's the pattern? I'm looking for a pattern in between cultural, structural, public, and internalized. When I got this job, I hesitate to talk about my job because I really need my job really bad. I love my job. I love you guys. But when I got there and I got to my job interview, I didn't have a bachelor's degree. And it was the requirement was a bachelor's degree. And the lady who had the job before me, who I was replacing, was kind of a rock star in the community. Like, it's Donna Gibson. And I had met Donna Gibson and got all like fangirl, all like, oh my God, that's Donna Gibson. I hear about her all everywhere. She's wonderful. Everybody knows her.
Great. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure she has 2 degrees. But when I was trying to talk them into getting why you should hire me, I shifted into a rebellious personality type, that an archetype that I created as a little girl in order to make myself feel more confident that I have the ability to hustle. I come from a long line of hustlers. My dad did some time. My grandparents sold moonshine. I come from a long line of hustlers like that. But I can use that street education in order to benefit my life. And I didn't realize I was doing it. And now that I did it and it worked, it helps me to be able to communicate this to other people, that I sold myself in that product of, this is what I can do for you. Because I have had this life experience, I'm willing to go into that jail and talk to these guys, because I do go into male mods. And I mean, I've been locked in a room with 30 men before, and that's terrifying. Why they need to lock me in is another story. But I'm willing to do it because I know what it's like to have someone you love addicted. And I know what it's like to be that person addicted to one extreme or the other. And I know what it's like to have somebody care enough about you to give a shit whether you live or die, and hand you one small thing. Here's this little bitty thing that nobody else in the world appreciates because it's old and it's not new and it's not great and it's not fabulous and it doesn't cost $1 billion. But this one little thing, this door I'm going to open for you, is not going to make you rich, but it's going to make you self-sufficient. Those things happen to me. And when they happen to me, it changed everything. So I want to be that person. I'm willing, not just willing, but I want to. I'm not going to resent you for it. I'm not going to not show up and do half of my job. I'm not going to, because I know how important it is. I know what it can do. And it's another thing too, if somebody says they're going to help you and they're going to do all these things for you, and they've never done it before, they've never had it done for them. It can be done. It's a powerful thing when the person who's doing the help has received the help. It turns on some kind of survival mechanism, some subconscious awareness that helps you to be able to see resources that maybe others aren't seeing, that they exist, but we just don't see them. And then I got licensed for it. I didn't even know what it was. That's Penny Sittler, though. She guided me,
Right.
So amazing. And I loved what we were talking about earlier too, with like Americans being so distant from culture. It's almost that like we have the opportunity now to create our culture and
Absolutely.
create a culture of recovery, which is what we're trying to do with this campaign. What the Justice Cafe and the Recovery Cafe are trying to do is reach out to these people in the community that are a part of the community but feel separate or feel that they're just not a part of it, and making them part of it. Like I in my mind, I visualize it. I'm an artist too, and I see it as like this community is this constantly changing, fluctuating shape, and sometimes like folks get pushed out, or they push themselves out, they walk along the edges, and it's up to the community to reach out and bring those people back and make them a whole again.
Yeah, artists are magicians in a lot of ways, that they can take this small thing that people don't want to look at. They don't want to look at it because it's unpleasant. And you can make that thing so big and so weird and so interesting that they cannot stop looking at it. I love your generation. Your generation is so empowered. You really are. You have so much information and so much ability right there at your fingertips, and you just run with it. I love that. I've never met more politically active young women in my life. Like, that's very cool.
Oh, yeah.
Love it. That's another way I think, 'cause I'm also an artist, is to educate others around us, right? As you're saying, kind
Yeah.
of light to an issue. I'm a visual learner. You said you were, and that's how I interact with the world and perceive the world around me, is through visual means, and that's how I express myself as well. And that's how so many people can be brought into these really important issues. We can educate them through art. And it can be a really powerful tool for healing, for education, for liberation, for taking down stigma. The list is could go on and on and on.
Absolutely. That's part of what we're trying to do with this art class, with this online. It started off as a lockdown, nice and tight, nobody but Licking County kind of a Facebook page. And it was introduced to me the idea that if we opened it up, we could open it up to people who were in recovery all over, everywhere, and also introduce them to the idea of Compeer, so that maybe they have can develop their own kind of community peer support. So if I'm having conversations with people who have, let me give you a better example. Someone that I love, he's such a great guy, is one of our Compeer friends, just got a late life diagnosis, and he has a mental health diagnosis, and he has become a part of our Facebook page. But not only that, he's become the DJ of our Facebook page, and he has these wake up motivational videos that he makes where he gets up and he talks about his symptoms, his motivation, his lack of motivation. He talks about his coping skills, and he did a very big and very important video on his diagnosis and how that feels when you have all these weird symptoms and you don't know what's going on, and then somebody gives you the word for it, and then it just clicks. Like, everything sort of makes sense, and you can stop beating yourself up, because it's not a personality defect, it's a chemical disorder, or it's a traumatic brain injury, or something along those lines. How it just kind of aligns you with that purpose, that life purpose. He's really cool. Yeah, you'd like him. But I like the whole idea of creating this platform where people can advocate for themselves. I have a very good friend who has a Facebook page for schizophrenics, the art of schizophrenia. And it's not that you have to give a diagnosis to her in order to get in. You just have to care about people who have schizophrenia. You care about them and you're interested in their art. That's what it's called, the art of schizophrenia. And she's an amazing artist, and she's a really great teacher. Just having that ability to teach people, like, I have a diagnosis and you're not in danger. It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you. I just want you to understand this is what it's like. I know somebody who has autism that is a chemical engineer. She makes more money than I will ever see in my, she's a very wealthy woman, very highly educated and wealthy woman, super down to earth. But we met her at Standing Rock, right? She's very high functioning and has a lot of trouble socializing. And you got to imagine, we're alongside of a river and we're facing down the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and she looks terrified. And I have a friend who's a little hillbilly Indian from Kentucky that I went with her, actually. And my friend is just a talker. She's like me, she's a talker. She's got a little Irish in her, so she talks a lot. So she just scooped her up, and the girl walked around with us for 4 more weeks before we let go of her. And it never dawned on us that she had autism. We just thought she was a good listener. She did, and as we got to know her a little bit, we realized what we had done, but she's such a great person. And that stigma of if she had led with, I have autism, I want to talk to you about it, we might have underestimated how interesting and fun she is to be around.
Yeah. Isn't it a shame that one really stigma is really successful in dehumanizing a lot of people, and
Yeah.
in that sense, uh, mental illness can sometimes just someone can be only limited to their mental illness, right? And I think we've touched on this a bit, but like language is a huge part of stigma, and I've recently come across like uh, a lot of people will say like I'm bipolar or I'm schizophrenic, right? But you would
Right.
never say I'm cancer, right?
Right.
And
Right.
so the bipolar, what have you, whatever diagnosed mental illness you have isn't you.
Right.
It needs to be we need to see each other in our humanity a bit more. And
Yeah.
those don't define us. Same with addiction, right? Same with experiencing homelessness. You would say, a lot of folks say, I'm homeless, but you
Mhm.
wouldn't say that is the person. The language is, we're so used to saying that that's who we are and that's our person is
Right.
my class status, my mental health status. The list can go on. So
Yeah, this word fits into my group and not my group or another group. I mean, there are so many words that are constructed to keep us apart, to keep us from coming together and having conversations like this and figuring out how much we have in common.
mhm.
Yeah,
It's designed to be that way. As Alex
exactly.
said, we need to bring each other in more, but the system is designed to keep us siloed off, to other each other,
Yeah,
and that's kind of what exacerbates, gives stigma that fuel to kind of keep us silenced in a lot of ways.
absolutely. Yeah, makes it easier to control us if we don't have as much money, we don't have power, we
Absolutely,
feel like we're alone.
totally.
So, what are some ways that we can overcome these stigmas? Like we've talked about the internal, public, and structural. So, there's a lot of ways to do it, and it's coming together and having these conversations. It's doing shadow work, like you were saying, recognizing yourself and how you see yourself, and changing the way that you think about maybe some of these more challenging aspects of yourself, as
Mhm.
well as the public stigma, taking it easy on folks around you, like not necessarily basing your impression of them on a diagnosis, on their circumstances, on um, a first impression. Anyways, it's always humanity first, is something that we've talked about. Um, and then structural stigma, the big bad boss of it all, is how do we change the systems in our life that perpetuate these stigmas, perpetuate public stigma, perpetuate internalized stigma? And is it that we overcome our own internalized stigma, we come together as a community and resolve our social stigmas that we might have, and then in that way together we confront these structures, and say, hey, we're moving on, we're evolving as a society, we need to change.
I get it. I do. I do think that uh, maybe the way that you can help might differ from the way that I can help, might differ from the way that someone else can help. So I think figuring out what is your purpose? Why are you here on the planet? Why are you what's the thing that you need to do before you leave the planet? And it will change because I'm old. What I thought I needed to do was turn 40 and move to Europe and sell up all my stuff and live in a tent. And when I turned 40, I was like, my kids wish I would leave. They wish I would leave. I'm not going nowhere. But when you figure out what it is that you what your passion is, people change when they see other people change. People will be brave when they see other people be brave. I have people in my Compeer group who, when they're alone or when they are in public and small, uh, if there's only 2 or 3 of us, are very shy and reserved. But you get us together and there's 10 or 20 of us and they are the biggest hams and they're hilarious and they're funny and they're telling jokes and they're charming, and some kind of a confidence is lit, some kind of a light in them shines brighter than it would in other situations because they don't feel comfortable in those situations. So I try personally to be hyper aware of the situation that I'm in and who are the most vulnerable people in my situation. And I try and take care of the most vulnerable people as far as making them feel comfortable and not alone and protected and all that, you know what I mean, without being hovering, but also by encouraging people to set a goal. It sounds simple. It really does. Just what do you want to do with your life? I realize if you have agoraphobia and you can't get out of your apartment, you've got stuff you have to do in order to that process of is such a priority, but that can't be everything. You still want to feel, how about just for today, we feel like sisters, even though I can't come to your house because of a pandemic or because of I'm afraid to leave my house or whatever that is. What if we read a book? We read Codependent No More. That was a great book, by the way. Really did weird things to us subconsciously. A big group of us were like, oh my God, this is way too self-reflective than any of us were prepared for. But that doing something together is so empowering when you have other people around you and when you have people who are setting that example of, I know a lady who's deaf, who is, she talks all the time. She's mute, but she makes sounds. So she doesn't speak words, but she makes sounds and she can communicate with those sounds. She can write, she writes you a letter, but when she's passionate and she's emotional, she's writing, she's not even writing, she's just using her hands. And when she's empowered, when there are people around her who are, supporting her, she's hilarious. If she had a voice, she'd probably be a stand-up comic because she's funny. The things that she does, the way she uses her physicality to communicate. I don't know if I'm rambling. I ramble a lot. Okay.
You're all good. All good. That's powerful too. That's very powerful. And I think we often forget just how many different ways we can communicate and see each other in our humanity too. And that is absolutely a very strong way to overcome stigma, public facing, personally, just seeing that we're like each other in more ways that we know, accept each other as who we are, and seeing we all have our experiences, our shortcomings, our charm, everything.
Yeah. What's that word? Advocacy. Those people who advocate, that makes such a difference. If I know of you or I see you around and I'm intimidated by something about you, maybe your confidence or your job or your whatever that is, if I'm intimidated by that, because I have this thing about me that makes me feel less than, if you start talking about the thing that you feel is less than or has been taught to you is less than, but is not really, that is so interesting and great, maybe that'll make me start looking at mine. Like maybe there's something to this that I can use. My agoraphobic people are the best people on Zoom and FaceTime. It becomes like, I have a friend who's got a room in her house set up like a diner because she can't go to a diner and she misses that. But when you talk to her on Zoom or Messenger, she likes to have the video on. So it's like us having coffee and we're just talking, and it's so interesting. And she has so much to say and she's so able and willing to reach people, connect, that connection. That's what it is. It's all about connection.
Mm-hmm. That's funny. I think the pandemic has brought all of our creative juices out for sure. Right now, like I have a makeshift standing desk instead of like an actual standing desk to kind of shift things around. So I love that.
I bought a house during the pandemic. When the pandemic first started, when they closed it down in March, I had just applied for a grant to help me get into my house. And Yeah, it has an outbuilding. So I have an art studio now, an outside separated from the house art studio with heat and stuff. I'm so excited. Yeah, really
Oh,
big blessing. I just celebrated 4 years I've been out of the shelter. And that day, that's it. That day, I just sat down in my art studio like, okay, it all comes. That's what Native people taught me. That's full circle. If
mm,
you're stubborn, if you are the most stubborn that your spirit can handle, if you just keep taking it and taking it and taking it and trying, eventually you're gonna get what you want. It'll come. You just gotta wait. You gotta wait and you gotta take all the pain that comes with it. And you gotta do something with that pain. Because pain is growth. That's another thing.
true that. We're actually gonna also, or actually, sorry, go ahead, Al.
Oh, I was just gonna say I so much appreciate your wisdom and perspective, Donna.
Thank you. You're so sweet.
Um, Mona, what was up?
I was gonna say, little sneak peek where there's a video that Al showed us that we'll post sometime this week that talks about how trauma forms, and a lot of it is your sense of self was in a sense taken away from you, whether that was through childhood or not, but we often confuse like traumatic events as trauma when trauma is internal, and it comes down to losing yourself essentially. I'm sure the video will do a much better job explaining that, but that is a very good perspective on full circle and finding yourself and how important that connection, as you're speaking to, Donna, is.
And Indian people do that though. They traumatize themselves physically, physiologically. They don't drink, they don't eat, they go out into the woods, they have these spiritual experiences. It's called crying for a vision, a hamblacia. You literally cry, you just cry it out. You sit on a blanket, you have your prayer pipe, and you just have it out. You and God just have it out. Whatever your sense of higher power is, your connectivity to the universe, whatever that is, your sense of self, you just scream it, cry it out. And it's cathartic and it changes you. It really does. It makes you grow in ways that you don't want to grow because it hurts. You don't want to do that. It hurts. But when you do it, it makes you, empowers you, gives you empathy and compassion for the world.
I think that perspective's so valuable when talking about trauma and talking about pain, because if you like just let pain and trauma exist without purpose, then it's hard. It's harder to exist in that kind of mental space rather than using it as a driver for growth, for evolution, for change.
Yeah.
And then, oh my gosh, yeah, on a roll.
Right, because you think about your art. Have you ever painted something when you were just heartbroken? Somebody just ripped your heart out of your nose and stepped on it. That's the most beautiful, painful. If you can put that on canvas, people will stop when they look at that, even if it's the most ugly. I saw somebody had a canvas they stabbed, and underneath it was some stuff coming out, but you couldn't stop looking at it because all over it was just pain. And all of it was recognizable. All of it was resonating.
I
But
love
then
it.
you fall in love and you're like, oh, I'm so in love. And then your art becomes this fluffy, soft pastel, which is pretty. It's not real powerful in my opinion, but I don't know. I like that painful art. I do. I'm attracted to that.
Just expression, right? And being that,
Yeah.
expressing those raw emotions. I so miss, because I was an art major in college, whenever projects would be up like in the hallways and stuff, and trying to read like everyone's experiences, what they're saying. And there was a few like pieces like that you're saying, kind of like ripped just out of the ordinary, like not your traditional paintings, or I guess topics that people express. So it's really interesting to see how artists express themselves, and what they put on the canvas.
Yes. The Licking County Board of Disabilities has this. They have so many different art programs for people with disabilities. And it's so interesting to see different perspectives on art, just from different individuals. Uh, just the different levels of function and how they express. sometimes it's people with the lowest functioning abilities. Like I used to work in a hospice unit with people who had Alzheimer's, and people who couldn't feed themselves. You know, their hands get all so they can't, and they're not really cognizant of a lot of that ability when they're in the end anyway. But I figured out as an activities person, that was my job at the time, if you hold their hand, and a lot of times when they're people with Alzheimer's, when they're in the last few years of their life, their cognizant functions are similar to young children. You know, they can't feed themselves, they can't speak, but they have that need to put things in their mouth. So we would do art therapy, not art therapy. We would do play art. Thank you. I gotta watch what I say because I'm not a therapist. I'm just an artist. But we would do it like to help them calm down. If they were like, you know, I prepped for sundown because I knew when the sun came down, they had a lot of behaviors. So I like to wear them out during the day so they slept real good. When they were ready to sundown, they would just knock out. But peanut butter on a table covered with wax paper and things they could touch and mush and taste, and then music. Like you play music from their generation and you can see people tap their toe, and sometimes you can hear them mumbling words, and you know that music is there. It's somewhere in here, not caught up in that web of Alzheimer's, dead cells. There's still some cells in there that are still, I mean, I don't know. I guess we underestimate people depending on how we perceive their function levels. I just want people to have a quality of life. I think it's so important. No matter where you are, you're stuck in this earth suit, so you might as well enjoy it, you know?
Absolutely amazing. Hey, so I think we're getting close to time here. I'd love to share your page.
Please.
And
Compeer Circle of Friends.
Absolutely. And do you want to talk a bit about your art show that you had recently?
So we had an art show. It was called, wait a minute, was it, I'm having a brain fart. I think it was called Art and Soul. And it was made by Licking County artists, exclusively Licking County artists, who were in recovery from whatever, doesn't matter. We don't just, as long as you are a program working, active recovery person, you are recovering, you're taking steps to help yourself in the right direction. So it was a video made for us by Jim Haynes. He's a local artist, somebody I met through the Compeer program. He's a core member of the Compeer program, and he is a digital artist on top of a lot of other amazing talented things. But he made us it wasn't a big show, wasn't a big giant thing, but it was beautiful in that way that it was weird and beautiful at the same time. So sometimes, normally what happens is when you have an art show, it's vetted by people. My puppy's in here eating my shoes. It's vetted by people who don't have disabilities or don't have mental illnesses or don't have traumas that they acknowledge, or they don't have addictions that they acknowledge. So when you look at somebody's art and you say, okay, here's a piece of art made by somebody who has committed suicide, survived suicide attempts, and they've found this venue to dump out this expression of self-loathing and look at it, and hung it on the wall and walked around it, and they're healing from it. And this process is what they're trying to show you. And somebody who's not had that life experience might look at that art and go, you know, that's not art. That's not what art is. Art is this thing that we want to structure in these classes and teach people. And, you know, but people who have mental illness tend to live on budgets of $800 a month, and they can't afford to take classes. So the requirement for art is not that it be, our art anyway, is that it be cathartic. Our art is very cathartic. It's very healing, and it's very messy, and it's very funky, and it's very weird. And once you're in, oh my God, dude, you're in, because you just get swallowed by it. It's so weird and fun. And it feels so good. That process of just feels so good. But it's not measured. It's not like the nose is this long and this far away from the ear and the mouth is here. And then we need negative space. None of that means anything in our process. And that was the beauty of this show, is that it wasn't put through any kind of a vetting process in that way. Nobody felt rejected, because that's a really painful thing for someone to put. I want to put all my pain on a canvas. And if you want, you can reject it. You go right ahead and reject it. Everybody else rejects me. And that's damaging, I think, to artists. So this one was much more freeing in that people could feel free to submit whatever they wanted. I did. I no cuss words and no naughty bits, because, this is funded by other people. So we want to make sure we don't make anybody angry. But other than that, it was fun. You had to see it. I think it was great. I think we did a great job. There was not a lot of artists who participated, but the stuff that we had was amazing. Matt Wheeler. I went through Matt Wheeler's stuff and was like, I want it all. I want everything. And I didn't get it all. I really didn't, because he was still creating, He's an amazing person. He's an amazing, I used to work with him back in the day. So we've known each other through that journey, through that up and down. He's an amazing artist. There were quite a few. Elizabeth Beck. Elizabeth Beck is an artist who lives in Alexandria, or she did, and now I think she's in Newark now. But she has a YouTube channel called the Lilac Renegade. And she teaches people. She's got a little camera that sits on top of her desk, and she shows the entire process. And she's got all that editing software, so it can go like super fast and you can watch the whole thing. And I love that, because I don't have that ability, but it's so neat to see that process. And another artist, he's willing to put it out there, like, this is what I do when I feel anxious, or this is what I do when I feel sad. Those kind of coping skills, that's powerful stuff.
Absolutely.
I'm really flattered that you're willing to show the show for us, like put it on and like get some more people to look at it.
Definitely. So keep an eye out on the Newark Think Tank Poverty Facebook page. We will be sharing that on there, and sharing some more of the work from the Compeer group, as well as art classes for through that program. So Donna, thank you so much. It's been amazing talking with you, and I hope we have you on again soon.
Thanks for letting me ramble. It's nice to see you all. Thank you. And I'm going to start looking at my emails a little more closely.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and just to plug, not this Friday. No, this Friday, isn't it?
Yeah. It's coming so fast.
Mona, do you want to talk about the upcoming Recovery Cafe?
Yeah, so Newark Think Tank on Poverty has been putting on these digital recovery cafes, where they're on Friday nights. We bring on local artists. We're trying to, not shift away, but we've brought in non-local too in the age of pandemic. Everywhere's kind of everywhere. But we bring on artists, and it's a safe space, a sober space where we share art, talk about art, and just be vulnerable in our experiences. And so it's a great way to spend a Friday night. We're all isolated from time to time, and we're trying to connect. So it's a great way to interact with local community members as well. And that this project is helping expand on the mission of the digital recovery cafes as well. So there's one this Friday, and then there's one March 5th. And I will be sharing my art on one of them, and Al's going to share their art on one of them.
All right.
So it's going to be really fun. I'm very excited. The event is on our page. If you register, you'll get a Zoom link. And then I think that's it. Al, did I miss anything?
Nope, there's an open mic afterwards. So if you're watching this and you're a musician, definitely think about performing on the open mic. It'd be great to have you. I think Kyle Browning is our musician for this episode. We're just really looking forward to continuing the movement, creating the culture, and recovering as a community.
And hopefully when we get in person again, who knows when that is, we'll keep having those meetup recovery cafes as well, to have that in-person connection. On top of that, all the art that we share. So definitely come Friday if you can. I think it's 7?
7 p.m. Yep.
7. Yep.
Alrighty.
See everyone there.
Thank you so much. Have a good night, ladies.
Donna.
Bye, Donna. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.